Good evening, everyone. We begin the readout tonight with new jaw-dropping audio recordings of Kevin McCarthy talking to and about his Republican colleagues. In these recordings obtained by the New York Times, McCarthy acknowledges that members of his party played a role in stoking violence on January 6th. And here's the kicker. It turns out McCarthy thinks the same way about Trump and the MAGA tribe as you do and as I do. Here he is talking with House Minority Whip Steve Scalise about Matt Gaetz, who criticized other Republicans by name in the days after the Capitol attack.
This is serious to cut this out. Yeah, that's I mean, it's potentially illegal. What are you doing? Well, he's putting people in jeopardy, and he doesn't need to be doing this. We saw what people would do in the Capitol, and these people came prepared. With rope, with everything else.
Okay, Kevin. I mean, sounding more like me than like a Republican. Oh, but there's more. McCarthy expressed concern about Republican lawmakers' rhetoric, fearing that people would get hurt.
Tension is too high. The country is too crazy. I do not want to look back and think we caused something or we missed something and someone got hurt. I don't want to play politics with any of that.
Country is too crazy. Tension is too high. McCarthy and Scalise also discussed incendiary comments made by multiple Republican lawmakers. They took particular issue with comments from Mo Brooks, who said at the rally that it was the day American patriots start taking down names and kicking ass. Referring to Brooks, McCarthy said the Trump loyalists had behaved even worse on January 6th than Trump.
Do you think the president deserves to be impeached for his comment? That's almost something that goes further than what the president said.
This audio was obtained in reporting for a forthcoming book, This Will Not Pass. And the book has also revealed more on what goes on under Mitch McConnell's icy shell. In the hours after the attack, one of the book's authors, New York Times reporter Jonathan Martin, asked McConnell about his feelings on the violence. And McConnell said, quote, "I feel exhilarated by the fact that this fellow finally totally discredited himself." Now, this is according to the book. And this excerpt was obtained by the Washington Post. McConnell also said about Trump, he put a gun to his head and pulled the trigger. Couldn't have happened at a better time. McConnell also reportedly asked Martin, what do you hear about the 25th Amendment? Eager for intel about whether the cabinet and the vice president might remove Trump from office. Who knew? Republicans, they think just like us. But that is where the similarities end. Because unlike the Democrats and their leaders, they did absolutely nothing about it. Joining me now is MSNBC political analyst, former RNC chair Michael Steele, and former U.S. Senator from Alabama, Doug Jones, who is a distinguished senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. Thank you both for being here. It is pretty remarkable, gentlemen, to find out that these men are completely frauds. They talk like MAGA, but behind the scenes, I literally could get Kevin McCarthy to fill in for me if I wanted to take a night off. Like, he could be my fill-in because he says all the same things that I say about the Mo Brookses and the Marjorie Taylor Greens. He said he thinks the same thing, Michael Steele. He thinks the exact same things. The difference is he doesn't have the cojones to do anything about it. Your thoughts?
Well, the interesting thing is I can imagine Kevin filling in your seat for just one night. But
it would have to be audio, Kevin. It couldn't be, the slimy, phony.
I got it.
He'd have to be audio. Audio Kevin could fill in for me any night. He'd fit right in.
Audio Kevin is the joint. I got it. No, I understand that. But here's the point. What your audience would think of Audio Kevin and you after the fact is really what we see here, right?
Yeah.
Because the reality of it is, I'm not shocked nor surprised about this. We've had this conversation in the past. We all had the reporting you've reported on the conversations that Republicans have privately with versus what they're saying publicly. Now we're actually getting verification of that. Now we're actually hearing them in their own words in private conversations after the fact about what happened and what they were thinking real time. But here's the rub for Kevin McCarthy, for example. The lie wasn't, Kevin didn't say this to the New York Times or didn't say this in the recording. The lie is what he was saying to his caucus.
Yeah.
The lie is what he was telling them he was going to do as a leader of the caucus, that he was going to go and confront Donald Trump. I'm going to go tell him he should resign. And Mitch McConnell asking sheepishly, oh, so what did you hear about the 25th Amendment? You know, oh, do tell, share the little gossip. But these were people who were not prepared to confront their respective caucus with the truth. Yeah. Of what they were saying publicly, what they were saying privately, going forth in front of cameras and saying it publicly.
You know, and Michael, you and I have talked about this before about the Tea Party, because I think a lot of us missed what the Tea Party was. The Tea Party was the beginning of this nightmare. And people wanted to ascribe the Tea Party things that, you know, economic anxiety. It wasn't true. They had this deep-seated, you know, terror about modernity and change. And you once said to me that the Republican leadership, people like Kevin, people like Mitch, they have a tiger by the tail, and they believe that they can control it. They believe, I mean, Kevin McCarthy today, NBC reporters caught up with him, and they asked him, do you think this is going to hurt your chance to become speaker? And he's like, no. The arrogance of these people, and I think MAGA people don't understand it. These people arrogantly believe that when they're on leadership calls, they can call these people crazy because they're like, we can control them. Just get their votes, make them vote, and then we'll get the tax cuts for our rich donors. And they genuinely think they can control these people, and they can't control them.
Well, that's true. I mean, and they know it's true. How do we know? Well, they've gone through two speakers before Kevin McCarthy's turn is up, right? Yeah. There was a speaker, Paul Ryan. There was a speaker, John Boehner, and those very same individuals, you know, now in the form of the Freedom Caucus said, bye-bye. So they were done with them. Kevin recognizes that what he's been able to do that Boehner and Ryan were not willing to do, because at the end of the day, they wanted to keep some semblance of their own, you know, dignity intact, was to go forth and pretend that Donald Trump wasn't the thing that they say he is. And then, but privately sit there and go, oh, no, you know, Donald Trump, we got to get rid of him. And so Kevin is willing to do that. He's willing to go to Mar-a-Lago and grovel. And that's not something that the others were willing to do. But that tiger by the tail thing, be careful what you think you have in your hand, baby, because it bites hard. And Kevin will find that out. And what I've heard, just real quick, what I've heard is that a lot of caucus members are not happy with being played as punks the way he's played them.
That's right. They're stupid, but they're not dumb. Let me add you to this, Senator Doug Jones. I mean, we know that there is a legitimate reason for them to fear these people electorally. I mean, you, sir, who is a civil rights hero, were replaced by someone who I'm pretty sure I can hear a dial tone every time I see him on TV. Like, this guy doesn't know the basics of law or American history, but they're like, oh, I'd rather have him. He's MAGA, right? And so they know that they can be replaced. Good people get replaced all the time by sort of lunatics on the right. So there's a reason for them to be afraid. But I wonder about people. You served with Chuck Grassley. This story keeps coming back to me. My poor team, I'm obsessed with it. Chuck Grassley, who is an old-fashioned Republican from Iowa, the day before the insurrection, put out a statement saying that he and not Vice President Mike Pence will preside over the certification of the Electoral College votes because, quote, we don't expect him to be there. If he understood the plot and was willing to go along with it, there's no hope for the other party, for the Republicans, right?
Well, you know, look, you can read that that way if you want to. I think that he might be also reading it in a way that Pence was part of the Trump crowd. Pence was going to go along with it, but they're not going to let them do that. I don't think McConnell and those guys at that point really thought that they were going to overturn the election. I think there were too many in that Senate who were not going to vote to overturn that election. And quite frankly, I just don't believe necessarily that Chuck Grassley was part of the group to do that. But what I do, it does seem to me, and that's the first time I at least remember seeing that, tells me that he thought Pence would, that Pence wouldn't show up rather than having to certify, you know, his successor, so to speak. But I do think there's a problem, and Michael's absolutely right. They do have a tiger by the tail here. It is a problem that they can't really control, and they are trying to control it from within. And that's why you see McCarthy, McConnell, and others trying to get back into the good graces to try to get their base back under some kind of control where they can help get good Republicans elected. But it's a difficult road right now, given the fractures within the Republican Party. We'll see how these primaries turn out.
You know, the problem with that, Senator Jones, and I have great respect for you, is that if, you know, I once interviewed a guy from an organization back in the early aughts, the early 2000s, who said, we're going to go along with Republicans for now because they're the vehicle to get what we want. This guy was far Christian right. And he said, but there's going to become a time when we're going to expect them to actually deliver the things we're demanding.
No.
The current freshman class of Republicans and freshman class of governors and people who are running now, they're promising to actually deliver on some of the incredibly extreme things that are being demanded. They don't believe in the whole say that you're going to be MAGA, but when you get there, just vote for deep tax cuts for the super rich. They actually want the fascistic, you know, society retrograde things. They want to turn back society.